Hello everyone and welcome back to Lucas Mackintosh's Retro Video Game Room, a place that welcomes video games that have been labelled as bad, average, overlooked and also ambitious ports that try and push consoles to the maximum. This is part 2 of a Sonic the Hedgehog Sega Master System double bill, and in this video I'll be putting Sonic 2 through its paces in order to see whether it truly is a bad game or if it has been severely misunderstood by critics over the years. Having read and watched so many reviews of this game, the general feedback seems to be that there's poor hit detection, lackluster boss characters, cruel level designs in parts, unwanted and unnecessary gimmicks, and you can't even play as Tails. So I decided to play it through to get to the bottom of why I feel this game is just so unloved. Funnily enough, I played Sonic 2 as a kid and I'll be honest, it really frustrated me to no end, as I couldn't get very far. I could only really get to the Sky High zone, and because my young mind couldn't figure out how to use the hang glider, I would be permanently stuck on this zone. I can kind of see why people don't like this game very much. A few of the zones don't seem to fit into what you would expect from a Sonic game, and right away to me feel a little out of place. Compared to the first Sega Master System game, the level design has been severely altered, with many acts having Sonic manoeuvre through different routes to try and find the exit, so it does feel a lot more challenging. Also, unless you manage to find all the Chaos Emeralds, you won't be able to fight Robotnik. This means that there are 2 endings that Sonic himself can unlock. So not only is this game a little tougher than the first, but there is a little more replayability, as finding all the Chaos Emeralds allows the Blue Hedgehog access to the game's hidden zone, where the final confrontation takes place. I should tell you right away that this game was not developed by Ancient, who made the first game. This was in fact developed by Aspect of Japan, who were given the IP by Sega and tasked to create a sequel that could build upon and potentially be bigger than the first. So this 8-bit Sonic 2 does not really have anything in common with the 16-bit version, unlike Sonic 1. There are no special stages, which is fine, and Sonic once again is on his own. Some Sega Master System owners feel that this game is just too difficult, particularly with the final zone, Scrambled Egg, which is so named because it contains a tricky set of tubes in which the player must input the correct direction to certain points for the speedster to navigate through. So I will be taking all of the things that the critics have said into account as I work my way through this game to see if Sonic 2 for the Master System can be hailed as a misunderstood classic, or to quote Red Dwarf, if it's bad then whether it should burn in the fires of Silicon Hell. I will of course try and be objective, unbiased and most of all honest throughout this review as I play it, so are you ready? Well, make yourself a nice hot cup of tea, grab a snack, because it's time to dive into Sonic 2 for the 8-bit Sega Master System. Gameplay. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is an 8-bit platform game for the Sega Master System and a sequel to the original Sonic. The game follows the formula of the first one, in which Sonic must work his way through several themed stages or zones that include enemies old and new, gimmicks and traps, hidden secrets, power-ups and some new bosses to defeat. In order to get through each level or act, Sonic must spin dash, jump, roll and try to make his way to the exit before time runs out. It is only when Sonic has beaten each zone and defeated all the bosses that the game ends, and Sonic will be victorious. According to the manual that comes with the game, once again Dr. Ivo Robotnik has invaded South Island on Mobius whilst Sonic was away adventuring elsewhere. When the Hedgehog returned, he found the once bustling island now devoid of any animals. Realising something was clearly wrong, he rushed over to his friend Tails' house and found him missing also. However, the two-tailed fox had left him a note. Dear Sonic, Robotnik is back and has captured all the animals on the island. He is holding me in a place called the Crystal Egg. In order to free me, you have to find and bring the 6 Chaos Emeralds. Robotnik made me write this. He says he's waiting for you and he's created 6 nasty robots in order to get rid of you once and for all. I don't know what he has planned, but Sonic, please be careful. Sincerely, Tails. So essentially Robotnik has kidnapped little Tails and Sonic must try and rescue him from the demented Doctor's evil clutches. So let's now take an in-depth look at each of the zones that Sonic will be blasting through. I will be mentioning the hidden zones and both endings later, and I know some of you might not want to know what happens when you beat the game, so when the time comes I will give you the opportunity to skip ahead as not to spoil things for you. Okay, so let's get this Sonic show on the road. Zone number 1 is the Underground Zone. Okay, so things get off to a tricky start in this zone as Sonic must work his way on the surface or underground in order to ride mini carts, collect rings, break into hidden rooms and avoid spikes, fireballs and even molten lava. There are a few routes that Sonic can take and it's an interesting choice as the first zone, not that I'm criticising whatsoever. The first game had Green Hill Zone, just like its 16-bit brother, but the developers aspect decided to start with something that would be unexpected and drastically different to what Sonic players would expect. So unlike dipping your toe in the water, these first acts make you realise that our blue hero must hit the ground running, and the traps and slight speed increase certainly adds to that sense of urgency. The main things to watch out for if you're going underground are the springs, the lava pits and the enemies. Also try and find as many hidden rooms as you can, as most of the walls have cracks, meaning that Sonic can roll into them or break them. Thankfully these first two acts are not too difficult and can be beaten quite easily if you know what you're doing. The third act, like the first game, features a mini level which contains a boss character that Sonic must get to. This time, rather than Robotnik showing up at the end of each act, he has built 6 robotic animals to do the dirty work for him. They each have their own specific method of attack, making them extremely dangerous. The first one occurs here. As Sonic is rolling down this slope here, a small cutscene occurs where Sonic looks like he is falling to his death, only for Robotnik to save him and place him at the final part of the act, at the bottom of the slope. Sitting in a small pit is a crab with a set of pincers moving rapidly right and left to try and disorientate our hero. Small round projectiles are also being propelled towards Sonic and he must avoid each one by jumping over them. Once he does this, they will always hit the crab and will stun it for a few seconds. So just do the same thing for each projectile until the crab is killed. Once this occurs, Robotnik flies back down and appears to chop the crab up with his propellers. Once he is thrown off, Sonic must then rush to the right and destroy one of Robotnik's capsules with his face on it to release the animals. Sky High Zone. Now this is the zone which many players find extremely annoying and frustrating, so let's highlight first some of the problems that the first two acts have and see why. Rather than have a simple level structure, Sky High essentially changes up the gameplay with some difficult elements. First of all, in Act 1, Sonic must avoid some spike pits which are very difficult to spot, and even more so on the Game Gear version, making it harder to ensure that our hero lands safely. Not only that, but then the Hedgehog must use multiple springs and platforms in order to make his way to the top. Now this is where things get a bit crazy, as now he must use a hang glider to slowly float to the right. To be fair, this first act is not too bad and is at least somewhat doable. Now Act 2 is the real test, as now Sonic finds himself in a stormy act that is set at night, with more than just one hang glider to use. Developers aspect have really upped the ante here as they throw in a few more surprises to hold the blue blur in this quest. Now with the hang gliders, Sonic must once again use them to navigate the trap-laden act. This time, Sonic must take advantage of gusts of wind in order to lift him higher up into the act, meaning that he now has more height. Now this is absolutely essential, as the higher Sonic can get, the more chances he has of reaching the ridiculously high platform, which signifies the end of the level. This is easier said than done, because there are a few enemies that Sonic might glide into, and this will cause him to fall to the bottom of the act, which contains a field of spikes. What is it with platform games and spikes anyway? Luckily, however, it is possible to springboard your way back to the top and try and reach the end. What makes this act so frustrating is the fact that the second hidden Chaos Emerald is situated right here at the top of this huge cloud, and so those players looking to try and unlock the real ending will need to collect this. Not only is it hard to know which clouds can be walked on and which ones can't, there's also a tricky set of springs which, if used in a certain way, will help propel Sonic to the cloud and the precious emerald. Again, this is easier said than done. Now, to be honest with you, I hated this act as a kid. I couldn't work out how to use the hang glider and I would often fall right back down to the ground. However, using the hang glider is not so hard once you know how to do it. I found that tapping back at certain times would help Sonic maintain his position on the air as he slowly descends to the ground. Also ensure that you take advantage of the wind gusts, as falling back into the spike pits is not fun. It can be done, trust me, just keep trying and you'll get the hang of the hang glider. Okay, so now it's on to the second boss, and it's this giant mechanical bird whom you face once you have killed all of its robotic chicks. Now I know they are the enemy, but they're all so cute. You must take out 3 waves of these little chicks, with the final wave being also destroying the eggs as they spawn infinitely. Even though it pains me to kill them or their eggs, it is entirely necessary as they can easily run into Sonic, costing him a life. Once again, just as in the last game, there are no rings to help our hero out on boss stages. Now the mother bird shows up and will move from the left side of the screen into the middle and back again, meaning that Sonic must spin her head when the opportunity allows it. I say this because the mother has one nasty trick up her sleeve to try and pay Sonic back for killing her children, and that's a nasty fireball. Now if you go to keep spamming her over and over, the chances are she will produce this fireball, and Sonic's momentum after hitting her will push him into it. So I would recommend waiting for her to throw the fireball and letting it move across the screen for a few seconds and then hit her on the head. This will ensure he won't hit it after bashing her. Keep plugging away and you will soon be done with this strange zone. Aqua Lake Zone. Now, Aqua Lake in my opinion is one of the best zones on the game. It can be slightly challenging with a few sections that require pinpoint timing and accuracy to make significant progress, but it's wholly achievable and, dare I say it, fun. The first act even introduces something that I don't even believe exists in any of the 16-bit games. If I am wrong, please feel free to correct me. It's that Sonic can skim across the water. Not only does it take walking on water to a whole new level, but it's suitably more impressive than General Zod from Superman 2. Now this level is straightforward with a few new paths to take during this level, on the surface or underwater. The underwater path is slightly more dangerous with spike pits and enemies, and due to the slow movements, if Sonic takes a hit he will fly backwards. Also, if he is underwater for long periods of time, then he will start to run out of air, just like in the last game. Once again, this is represented by a 5-second timer counting down. There are however air bubbles dotted about which will allow the speedster to refill his air and prolong the underwater journey somewhat. Towards the end there are some labyrinth zone-esque spears waiting for the hedgehog down here, but taking the top route is slightly easier and rewarding, but both paths eventually converge to this point here where there are a few nasty springs which will bounce you back onto the spear at this point. The trick to getting to the end here is to use the spring which propels Sonic to the right past the trap that is guarding the end of level sign. Then once you have made it in, do not hit this final spring here as it will send you back. Now hit the sign and prepare for Act 2. Now, Act 2 takes place completely underwater and features lots of air bubbles, a few spikes and more of those other bubbles that can hold Sonic inside so that he can reach higher areas in this act. I do find it a lot of fun here and quite straightforward. There are of course a few areas which might have players tearing their hair out in frustration. Most of these are due to the larger bubbles. However, one thing that does help is that when Sonic is in one and floating upwards, he won't run out of air, leaving you free to concentrate on trying to move him up past the many obstacles that are in his way. I think this part here where Sonic must float upwards and then, with careful timing, must move past this set of spikes here to a higher part of the act is a notable inclusion and one which must be mentioned as it can drive players slightly crazy, but it can be done. Plus there is also this section here. No sooner have you just got into the bubble, but you must endure spears and lobsters that seriously want to impede the hedgehog's progress. So if Sonic is hit by either of these, or even graces the top of a wall or spikes, then the bubble bursts, and he might potentially fall back down, meaning that he will have to try again. Okay, I honestly understand why people might hate this section of the act, but I didn't find it that difficult and was able to get up to the top quite quickly. I really enjoyed this part strangely enough and felt a great sense of accomplishment after running into the end of Act sign. Trust me guys and girls, it's all about memorising the bubble routes and ensuring you tap down to slow down the bubble, to slow down your descent, ensuring you don't hit the top of a wall and that you can pass it so you can float further upwards. Act 3 is pretty similar to Act 1 in that Sonic can skim across water if need be. He can also venture underwater a little bit here also. There's not much else to say about the aesthetics of the act really, just head to the right and you will meet Aqua Lake Zone's boss. It is an angry robotic seal who balances a big red ball on his nose. Now this guy can be very easy or very hard depending on how you approach him. It might be slightly confusing to work out what you must do at first, as if you try and spin dash him straight away then you will balance on his nose and he will move back and forth with you, making him very intimidating and hard to shake off. Also, he can use his red ball as a projectile which can wipe out Sonic instantly, so I can see why this at first glance can feel like an uphill battle. The trick is to hit him at this point here once the ball is on his nose. You need to time it and spin dash him very carefully and he will take damage due to Sonic's weight falling down onto the ball. Because of this, he suddenly gets angry and this will be signified when you hit him. Just keep rinsing and repeating and don't try and get cocky with this seal and take your time. Remember that less is more, as I found that moving rapidly means that Sonic loses a life because the boss can mirror your movements if you get trapped on his nose. Once you've sent this latest boss packing, it's time for a refreshing change of pace. Green Hill Zone. Okay, so this is my favourite zone in the whole game and is aspect essentially paying homage to the first 8 and 16-bit games, Green Hill Zone. I mean, compared to the Sega Master System zone, this is a gorgeous green lush set of acts which really show off what the Sega Master System can do, and it's easy to see that a lot of care and effort has gone into making this zone fun. Both acts feature tons of rings to collect and extra lives to find, and this means that players who may have lost a few lives due to the Sky High Zone's unfair mechanics and the Aqua Lake Zone will have the opportunity to restock and build their life counter back up again. I like to think of this zone as a chance to take a brief break from the madness. Both acts are in many ways similar and only really have some slight differences in their structure. You get your standard enemies here, but nothing that you won't be able to handle. I would recommend for the first act sticking to the top as much as possible to not only again take advantage of the extremely generous number of rings on offer, but to avoid the few spike picks which litter the bottom. Both acts do feature loops, and one key difference between Act 1 and Act 2 is that Act 2 uses springs to bounce Sonic skyward to higher platforms. The two acts themselves are not that taxing, so just take time out to enjoy them and ransack them both for collectibles. Okay, now I've heard many people complain about Act 3, more specifically trying to get to the pig boss, as there are quite a few springs that Sonic must use and it's easy for first timers to fall onto the cruel bed of spikes that await him. A lot of the problem comes with the fact that not only does the player not know where to go first time, but also that the game tries to trick you at this point here with this slope. Now it makes you think that rolling down it as fast as you can and then rocketing Sonic to the right is what you need to do. Don't do this. Instead walk slowly down the slope and you will see a set of springs. I would recommend always hitting the right spring first, and then when you reach the next set, hit the middle one, propel to the right, and then finally hit the left spring on the last set. I think hitting the right one does not give Sonic enough momentum and will send him crashing to the spikes below. This part seems to drive many players insane, but it's easier than it looks and can be achieved quite quickly with a little bit of trial and error and memorisation. Now once you have survived the small hurdle, now you must face what looks like a dancing pig who has the ability to change into a ball which can float across the screen towards Sonic at varying altitudes, and if he hits Sonic then a life will be lost. So the idea is to wait until he's morphed into the ball, avoid it, and then when this disappears, bop him on the head. What makes this battle a little dangerous is that it's so easy to slip up, so I would recommend timing your movements very carefully, as if you struggled with the springs to get here and you are not sure the pattern, then getting back up here can be quite difficult. Just keep moving from left to right, spin dash him, and as you do this move out of his way as far as you can and avoid the ball. With practice you can beat this pig and move on to the next zone, which is Gimmick Mountain. Okay, so this zone has a whole lot of things going on at once, with many enemies, hidden walls, crazy spinning wheels which are required to lift Sonic to reach high ledges, metallic spikes, slippery surfaces, minecarts, the list goes on. In fact, the first act requires Sonic to go in multiple directions, and the act is finished when Sonic makes his way to this minecart here, and takes him all the way to the left. I could be wrong, but to my knowledge I've never played a Sonic game where Sonic must go left to beat the stage. I think it's quite innovative of aspect to do this. Despite this coming straight after Green Hill zones, both acts are surprisingly easy to navigate, with the second one changing things up a little bit, introducing lifts, grounded ceiling springs designed to position Sonic into deadly spikes, and what looks like robot Ewok bears. I think the most difficult part of the zone, however, will be these wheels that Sonic must buzz around to get him to the top. They can be very fiddly, especially when you think you have got enough momentum. Sometimes it can be quite awkward and may take players a little while to get used to. However, this is a fun zone overall and not as intimidating as I thought it was going to be. Act 3 features a short set of obstacles in which Sonic must make his way to the boss room, all the while avoiding spikes and hopping on and off lifts which will either help or hinder him. I would say be careful here, as once Sonic gets on this particular lift it takes him a little way. It leads up to a row of spikes, so what you want to do is quickly hop off and wait for the lift to come back down. It will then take you across the final field of spikes and then stop at this point. Now quickly get off as the lift collapses. After it stops, use the springs here to get to the boss. Now this next robot creation, I'm not really sure what it is. It sort of looks like a hedgehog, but it might be a spike pig. Either way, it can be a very difficult boss to beat. The idea is to let the boss charge you and then move out of the way. When he does this, his spikes come out and he will hit the wall. When this happens, the spikes will temporarily go in, so quickly hit him with a spin attack and move out the way. Now be warned, if you hit the button on his nose, this will cause rocks to fall from the ceiling, which can be hard to avoid. If you don't hit him quickly enough, then his spikes will come out again and probably kill you outright. So once again you have to hit him, move to the other side of the screen, rinse and repeat. Once you have the rhythm of its attack patterns, then it's not so bad. Once he has finally bitten the dust, then Sonic moves on to the headache inducing scrambled egg zone. Now this is where a lot of players, myself included, take issue with the game. This zone is downright cruel and has some horrible tricks and traps, and of course more dreaded spikes. Now the first act features not only spike pits, flying enemies such as turtles, and also some enemies that blow themselves up. I don't know their names, so I'll just call them bombs, as they act pretty similar to those found in Super Mario Bros. 2. This act also features a cruel number of tubes that Sonic can navigate, with many leading to spikes or rewards. Now the tube gimmick is quite strong throughout the first two acts. You can't even finish Act 1 unless you know to push left, right or down at certain points. This is essential towards the end, as Sonic won't be able to enter the pipe leading to the level exit unless the right combination of directions is pressed at certain times. It will, as the name suggests, scramble your brain like an egg, and it took me a while to get through. Now I actually agree with the critics that this is just a little too much to bear, especially as the solution is not so obvious and requires a lot of trial and error to spot the second when you can push the buttons to send the blue blur flying towards the level exit. As for Act 2, I literally cursed at the screen, turning the air blue, maybe even bluer than Sonic. So once you've made it to this point here, this is where it really starts to hit the fan. Sonic has to ride on another lift which will take him through the rest of the stage. Sounds easy, doesn't it? Well, not so. You have to be on point right away. You need to jump on the lift, ride it, and then quickly jump into the first tube to land back on the lift, which carries on. Now the next part, I have no idea what I did. All I know is I had to let the lift take me up and then jump into another tube trap. As soon as you land on the lift, you need to quickly jump back up into the same tube you've just come out of in order to move further forward and land on the lift again. Now, how the hell am I supposed to know that first time round? Not knowing this sent me to the spike fields time and time again, where death is inevitable. Yes, the developers never even had the courtesy to respawn the lift, letting you try again, so you'll have no option but to kill yourself. So if you want another shot of this cool gimmick, then you're out of luck really, unless you lose a life. Thankfully, that's the only real difficult part of this act, and after exhaustion has set in after several tries, I eventually managed to figure out what to do and was finally able to get to Act 3. Now it's time for Act 3, which features Robotnik's second in command, Silver Sonic. Getting to him is quite easy after the stressful nature of the last two acts. That's not to say that in the beginning, if you mess up using the momentum from the strings, then you will land on his conveniently placed small set of spikes. The evil robot will spin into a ball like Sonic and try and hit you. Luckily though, if you roll into a ball, he can't actually do you any damage. You need to spin attack him when he comes out of the ball and when he's ready to attack. 9 times out of 10 he will then rush towards you and use his rocket boots and then go back into a ball. He will then bounce from both sides of the screen trying to intimidate and hit Sonic, so just again roll into a ball and try and bounce away or into him if you can. Once again, wait until he is upright and hit him. Now whatever you do, don't get too close to him, as he does have a rather spammy harpoon attack which could easily catch you off guard. Keep your distance and keep hitting him, moving left and right respectively. I'll be honest, this fight is relatively easy and I was able to beat him straight away. Just again, make sure you don't do any sudden movements, avoid the harpoon, hit him when you can, roll into a ball and you should be fine. Okay, now Sonic 2 on Master System has two endings you can achieve. There's a normal ending and the good ending. I will be explaining both in turn and how to achieve them, but if you don't want to know what happens, then please skip ahead to the next section. I will give you some time to do this. Right after Sonic has beaten Silver, Silver then blows up, meaning you have earned the normal ending. Now there is no sign of Robotnik or Tails, so what does this mean? Well, if you don't have all 6 Chaos Emeralds in the game, then you won't be able to reach either of them. 5 are hidden in Act 2 of the first 5 zones, and the 6th is given to you after Silver Sonic dies. However, he will only give you the 6th one after you have the first 5 in your possession. If you don't have all 6, then you won't be able to go to the game's hidden final zone, the Crystal Egg, which features a showdown with Robotnik. What you do get here in this normal ending is a beautiful credit screen with Sonic running all the way to the right. Once he gets nearer to the end, there is a day to night transition where he sees a gorgeous image of Tails, who is in the stars. Now I've seen many reviews of this game and many people interpret this to be a sign that Robotnik has killed Tails, with one reviewer being a little upset when he was a kid that little Tails had met such a grisly fate. My interpretation is that it's Tails saying, "Hey Sonic, I'm still alive, you must keep searching for me." To be honest, this ending is super satisfying to me and more than makes up for some of the unfair gimmicks and obstacles Aspectors placed in my path. Grr. Okay, so to get the second ending, you must do the following. Again, ensure you have found the first 5 Chaos Emeralds that are cunningly hidden on Act 2 of the first 5 zones. Once these are retained, then you must beat Silver Sonic. Once you beat him, then when he blows up, you'll be given the 6th and final emerald, and this will finally allow you to visit the hidden Crystal Egg zone. Now, as a kid, I had heard that there was a hidden zone and often had so many ideas as to what it would be like. This game was much too difficult for me back then, and I could only daydream or speculate as to what would await Sonic. However, now the wait is over. The first 2 acts feature trippy music, multiple routes, falling obstacles, enemies, and the acts are both made from crystal, even the spikes. It's a very strange zone, but both acts do contain a multitude of rings for our hero to collect to help accumulate a few more precious extra lives. Also, you need to watch out for the springs that have been strategically placed to force Sonic into the spike pits, and also to use them to ascend where they're needed. The first two acts of this zone are just unlike any other Sonic as encountered so far, and although navigating your way to the signposts is relatively easy, I was expecting something a little bit tougher. You should have little problem with them, and then it's on to the final hidden boss fight, finally with Dr. Ivo Robotnik. Okay, I will be repeating myself a lot during this boss battle because Robotnik's attacks tend to be almost the same. He sometimes kind of changes up his attacks and kind of transforms what he's doing each time. However, after each random attack, it always ends with large flashing bolts of electricity in the small area. So the key to this battle is basically making sure that they turn off. And once they're off, you can then spin attack him, then head back into the pipe. That's kind of how I do it anyway. But this is what I did, and I hope it helps. As soon as the level starts, jump into the pipe and you'll be blasted into the boss room. Immediately spin attack Robotnik. Now if you're quick enough, you can get 2 cheeky hits on him and then go back into the pipe immediately, which will spin Sonic round the boss room again. Now the reason for leaving the boss area so quickly is because Robotnik will produce 2 energy projectiles, which kind of look like flower heads. Also, he will start to turn on those flashing bolts of electricity in the small area. You must keep spinning around the pipe and time it so that as soon as the electricity goes off, then you can get back in the room, spin attack Robotnik again, now immediately get back in that pipe and start spinning round. You can now see that the Doctor has 2 more flower heads floating around inside, and then immediately after these 2 dissipate, 2 more are produced, so keep spinning around the room. Now if you go in to try and hit him at this point, you will die. He will then make more flashes of electricity in the room, so once again wait until they are about to finish and time it so that you can pop out either of the pipes and spin attack him again. Robotnik then produces, yes, more flower heads, and this time mini bolts of electricity in which he dispenses them on the floor, so stay spinning. As soon as this is over, there's more of that nasty flashing electricity. Again, wait until it is just about to stop and hit him again, and quickly get back into that pipe and spin. Okay, so 2 more flower heads will now be thrown into the room, so stay spinning. Then more of those tiny bits of electricity, and then more of the large electricity flashes. Again, wait for the electricity to stop, spin attack him again, get back in that pipe. As there are more flower heads, tiny electric bolts and flashing electricity, so you know the drill. Hit him again once the electricity has been turned off, go back in the pipe and essentially just repeat the above. Again, he does change his pattern slightly in 2 portions of the battle, where he will throw more of these flower heads right after the electricity is stopped, so you have to watch his patterns closely and wait until the large streams of electricity have gone off, and he won't throw anything else at you for a few seconds. Once this happens, attack him. Once you have hit him an exorbitant amount of times, his restraints will blow up, causing Robotnik to run away. Congratulations, you have done it. An FMV occurs to show the Doctor escaping in a high-tech teleporter where he vanishes. However, then Tails will appear in his place. Sonic and Tails, now reunited, run together in another gorgeous credits sequence. Take a moment to pat yourself on the back. This time when the two reach the end, they look up to find brightly detailed constellations of themselves in the stars. Just like in the first game, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 has the same items as in the previous one. First things first are rings. Now they come in two forms. They are scattered on the first and second act of each zone and are easily identifiable. Collecting 100 of these within an act will award Sonic an extra life. Also make sure you keep your eyes peeled for ring boxes. These will add 10 extra rings to his total. Collecting rings also gives Sonic an extra hit. If he takes damage, then he will lose almost all of his rings. However, one thing this game does that the last game doesn't is that Sonic can reclaim some of these rings now, which makes things a little easier. If he has no rings and takes damage or falls down a bottomless pit or drowns, then he will lose a life. I would say that there are more rings on this game than ever before, so collect and build up your life counter as much as you can. 2. There are apparently power-up sneakers that Sonic can collect according to the manual, but I can honestly say I can't remember ever seeing them in the game. I'm sure they must exist somewhere. From what I understand, they just do what they did last time and increase Sonic's speed again temporarily. So if anybody knows where they are, please let me know in the comment section below. Invincibility. Now this is a welcome return for this power up. Once again it makes the blue blur invincible for a brief amount of time, allowing him to once again obliterate anything in his path or run on spikes without taking damage. This time there are more invincibility power ups scattered throughout each zone compared to the last game and are definitely a sight for sore eyes. Number 4. Once again, if Sonic finds one of these TV screens with his mug on it, an extra life will be added to your total. With this game throwing unassuming players some difficulties, it does pay to pick up as many as you can. Chaos Emeralds. Although these are not technically a power-up, collecting all 6 emeralds will grant Sonic access to the Hidden Zone, which is the only way to fight Robotnik and save Tails. Just as in the last game, the first 5 emeralds are hidden on Act 2 of every zone, with the 6th one being relinquished by Silver Sonic when you beat him. The signpost. Okay, so another thing that hasn't changed is the end of act signpost that Sonic runs into to signify that he has completed it. Very occasionally the sign will give you something good. If it's Robotnik, you get sweet FA. If you get a ring symbol, Sonic earns 10 rings which are added to his score total. If you get a picture of Sonic, you earn an extra life, and finally, if you reveal the cute little face of Tails, then you will get an extra continue. Once again, I think the process is totally random, and I don't think in my history of playing the game have I ever got Tails, so I'm not entirely sure how to get them. It's probably possible, but my theory is that I need to play almost perfectly throughout each act in less time as possible, although I could be wrong. I should finally mention that unlike the first game, Aspect have done away with the ring shield power up. I guess their reasoning was that since Sonic can now reclaim his rings, it kind of defeats the purpose of having one. Also, again, there are no special stages to visit, which I think is a real shame, but there's more than enough power-ups and bonuses within the acts themselves to find. Graphics and presentation. Now, Ancient's first Sonic the Hedgehog was a very good looking game, but I would say that Aspect have done a sterling job in really building upon the template that was that game. Many of the in-game backgrounds look chunkier, more visually appealing, and the trees, hills and skies use a wide array of rich, dark and vibrant colours. Sonic's sprite looks a lot more detailed than in the first game and his animations are spot on. There's also so much variety in terms of how each actual zone looks and feels, and one of my personal favourites to look at was the Sky High Zone. Okay, it may not be everyone's cup of tea in its design, but the chunky trees and detailed sky with the gusts of wind and rain showing an incredible amount of innovation and attention to detail. One zone I wasn't a particular fan of was the Underground Zone. I mean, again, it just looks so out of place, and I personally feel that Aspect could have done a lot more to make this level look a little better. I mean, the mountains in the background could have been a little more pronounced and detailed, maybe showing some lava effects on them. Don't get me wrong, it's not totally horrible, but compared to the other zones such as Aqua Lake and Green Hill Zone, it's instantly forgettable to me, which is a shame. Apart from this, you can see that the zones after Underground were designed meticulously with a clear vision to try and differentiate each zone from the last. I mean, Scrambled Egg Zone is a bugger to beat, but it looks amazing and it's incredible to zip around. Despite many people not being a fan of the game's gimmicks such as the hang glider, minecart or giant bubbles, I grew to love them and really can't imagine the game without them. Admittedly, using the hang glider is a pain, but once you get used to it, you'll be soaring through the air like a boss and it becomes less of a problem. Despite whether you like or dislike this feature, there's no denying the aspect we're thinking outside the box, trying to create a different Sonic experience for different players. I know what you're thinking, Lucas, you have lost your mind. The Sky High Zone is just not fun, so how can you say that? It's full of razor sharp spikes, rain, and the second act is practically impossible and cruel. Well, I will explain why I like this and some of the tougher zones gimmicks in the overall section, so please bear with me. The enemies again are well placed in the game, with a few from the first Sonic game on the Mega Drive making a special appearance, such as the crabs and the helmet wearing bombs that explode when encountered. So it's nice to see Aspect adding in their own enemies as well as having a nod and a wink to the first amazing game. Okay, so now let's talk about the boss characters that you must fight. Yes, this time the developers decided not to use Robotnik on every zone as a boss and save him for later. Sonic must fight in total 6 robots who each have diverse patterns of attack. Now, some may find these bosses either too easy or not that memorable, but I really liked facing each one. I mean, Aspect probably could have gone down the route of having you face Robotnik on Act 3 of every zone, but that would have been too easy in my opinion, and I get the sense they wanted to keep the Demented Doctor hidden away as much as possible to make him more revered and anticipated when you finally get to fight him. What I love about all these bosses is the fact that they do seem easy but have the ability to surprise the player quite quickly if they have been lulled into a false sense of security, so you kind of have to take great care when facing them. Once again, there are no rings to help you this time around, so you have to rely on pinpoint reflexes to win. What makes things a little harder this time around is that Sonic must complete a short bite-sized level which requires getting through some tricky obstacles in order to fight the boss. Whilst they are not insanely difficult, I myself found myself getting caught out time and time again on Green Hills Zone Act 3. A lot of people hate this act with a vengeance because of the nasty springs that must be navigated correctly to get to the big boss, but it's easy when you know how. Again, I will explain later in the overall section. The real jewel in the crown is that Aspect created the cool little FMV as the game starts, showing Sonic chasing after Robotnik who captured Little Tails. It's graphically impressive and it's clear a lot of effort has gone into it. One last thing I need to mention are the title cards that occur before each zone. Now I have some slight concerns. Whilst they are all cool and feature Sonic and Tails together and for some reason, it's very confusing to me as it seems to indicate that Tails could have been or is a playable character in the game. As a kid I thought this would be the case. I mean, after all, why would Aspect put the fox with Sonic in them? You can't unfortunately play as Tails, and I do feel this might mislead players into thinking that you can, so maybe Aspect were planning on making him a character at some point and change their minds. I don't know if this is true, but later titles would allow you to play as Tails anyway. So I really don't have any issues with the graphics, and they get full marks from me. In-game story and cutscenes. Okay, so this time Aspect have done a little more than Ancient in this department. As I mentioned, I love the opening cutscene that follows the title screen. It sets the scene well and you instantly understand what you need to do. The booklet also adds a little more to the story, in which Sonic found a note which Robotnik forced Tails to write. The game was released in Europe a few months before Sonic 2 was set to debut on the Mega Drive, so in many ways this is kind of a prequel in which Sonic rescues Tails and then they team up in the Mega Drive for the 16-bit version. Funnily enough, I get a sense that each zone, as individual as they are, really tell their own story. For example, the Underground Zone says to me, urgency and unfamiliarity, because this is where Sonic is stuck in a zone that he wouldn't normally start on and must battle through to get to the top. Whilst Green Hill Zone kind of tells me that Sonic can take a bit of a chill pill and restock on rings. The whole game makes a great adventure as Sonic, who is out of his comfort zone, gets to ride on hang gliders, minecarts and into giant bubbles, and with some levels having multiple routes, the player is telling the story as they play. I can honestly say I've never wanted to rescue anyone as much as Tails in any video game that I've played. I mentioned earlier that as a kid I knew that to rescue him I would have to find a hidden zone, and playing this game is just so worth it for the epic storyline's conclusion. When you meet any of the bosses, there's this unspoken dialogue as if they are saying you must beat me to get to the next zone. The same with some of the obstacles, such as those bloody annoying tubes in Scrambled Egg Zone. Aspect are kind of saying, well, if you want to get further, then you must figure this out. There's just so much depth and imagination that Aspect have put into each zone, and dare I say it, they really make me feel connected to the in-game story and that I want to rescue Tails. The first game kind of did this, but I feel that this game does a much better job. As I mentioned earlier, you actually get some proper endings this time around, with credits at the end of each one. I would also say each zone is immersive and ultimately rewarding, spurring you on to try and figure out how to get your buddy back, so the player knows exactly what is happening, what is required of them, and are suitably rewarded whilst doing so with stunning visuals that match the story extremely well. Controls. Fans of the first game will be pleased to know that Sonic's controls remain pretty much unchanged from the first game. Pushing left and right will move him in that direction, pushing up will allow him to nod his head, and down will allow him to duck. If he runs in either direction and has some momentum behind him, then he can curl into a ball, destroy some broken walls or enemies in his path. He can loop the loop in Green Hill's zone, and it can really get him out of a jam a lot of the time if he is surrounded. If Sonic pushes either button 1 or 2 on its own or in conjunction with a directional pad, then Sonic will perform a spin attack. Also, Sonic can skim on the surface of the water if you can get enough momentum and press button 1 or 2 when he approaches it. This was a very cool move, and I'm so glad Aspect implemented it into the game. To my knowledge, you can't even do this in the 16-bit Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Like the first installment, the controls are extremely responsive and work very well in this game. Music and sound effects. I feel like I have given this game so much love. Despite the annoyances that this game has, which I will go into in the next section, this game has some of the most beautiful 8-bit chip-tuned Sonic music I've ever heard. From the urgent Underground Zone music, which sets the tone for the game, to the Sky High Zone's theme, which almost mirrors the action of Sonic trying to not only maintain enough height when using the hang gliders, but also trying to keep balance when battling the gusts of wind, which can either help or hinder your progress. I mean, the last game's music was amazing, don't get me wrong, and I'm happy to say that Aspect of Japan knocked it out of the park in surpassing Ancient's awesome tunes. It's probably a cliche to say this, but each piece of music just seems to fit the ebb and flow of each zone perfectly. My personal favourite has to be the boss theme and the cool Green Hills Zone theme, which is extremely catchy. Hearing this music and being able to collect a ton of rings and lives just added to the fun factor for me. I mean, just to say that each zone's theme is good would definitely be an understatement. I can still remember pretty much each and every zone's theme tune in my head. One of the most impressive is Gimmick Mountain, which has this slow undercurrent of danger and menace, especially as Sonic tries to use these large gimmick wheels to get higher up. Each theme is just a delight to the ears, and I just wish I could say more about them, or find something wrong, but I really can't fault the music, and its clear Aspect worked hard on composing individual songs rather than borrow from previous games. What also stands out is that I think they wanted to make this game stand on its own 2 feet, have its own identity, and also make it relevant to the Sonic series in general. The sound effects are also once again crisp, clear and appropriate, meaning that there are no noises which feel out of place. You have the sounds when Sonic collects rings, jumps attacks, curls up to a ball and jumps on springs, so once again, like the first game, they're absolutely perfect and I can't fault them in any way. Overall. Okay, so now comes the part where I try my best to convince you that this is not a terrible game, so I'll take some of the criticisms that I read prior to doing this review and try and rectify them here. Okay, so the first one seems to be the Sky High Zone. The Sky High Zone is just severely unfair. It's hard to see what is happening and the hang gliders, particularly on Act 2, are very difficult to navigate. Okay, so we do agree to some extent that this zone at first glance is a pain. I mean, both acts are quite challenging, particularly if you don't know what to expect. However, both acts are surprisingly short. Most of the problem lies in using the hang gliders. What you want to do is get on a hang glider and tap back 2 or 3 times. Wait a few seconds and then repeat. If you don't do this and just keep spamming the back button over and over again, then Sonic will slow his descent too early and he risks falling back to the ground, meaning that he won't make the ledges. It's all about trial and error really. Honestly, I would have wholeheartedly agreed with the critics when I was a kid about this zone, but it's not too hard and becomes more enjoyable once you get used to it. Okay, that's fair enough, Lucas, but Act 2 just sucks. There's a field of spikes right below the highest ledge I need to get onto, and there's also a Chaos Emerald that I just can't get. So how do I get it? Well, touche I suppose. The Chaos Emerald can be obtained by two ways. Firstly, there's a tricky set of springs that can be navigated to try and grab it. The problem is that some of the clouds Sonic tries to bounce onto are not platforms or don't contain the springs you think they do, and he will tumble to the ground. Now you guys know how high this emerald is, and I would say it's the hardest one to get in the whole game, but you can fly to it. Now, I'm not the world's best gamer, but I managed it in my first attempt after watching a video on YouTube, so if I can do it, you can too. Okay, the next criticism. Some sections of this game are just impossible, and I end up losing lives because of this. Well, one thing this game does that the first game didn't do is that all items respawn on an act. So if Sonic loses a life, let's say for example when he's on the Sky High zone, and you find an extra life and then you die right away, the extra life reappears when Sonic does. So as do all the rings. So in effect you could use this trick to build up a large plethora of lives, as the game makes you think you can only have 9, but the counter goes up even higher than that. It just doesn't tell you that right away, so collect as many lives as you can. Even on the Scrambled Egg Zone, if you are dying time and time again, it's possible to keep collecting the rings and replenishing the lives you lost, allowing you to have as many attempts as you like. So as challenging as the game is, it gives you almost infinite amounts of time to try and push through the challenges and try to get used to the many gimmicks that the game has. Okay, I think the first game is much better than the second game, so what makes you think this one is better, Lucas? Well, I agree that the first game on the Master System is fantastic. It's a great 8-bit version of Sonic and deserves all of its praise. You guys are certainly entitled to your opinions, but Sonic 2 in my humble opinion blows the first one out of the water. The zones are far more colourful, there's tons of hidden power-ups and secret rooms to find, some stages now have multiple routes, the Aqua Lake zone is much more enjoyable than the Labyrinth zone, and some of the gimmicks kind of make the game stand out a little more and give it its own identity. The bosses are all diverse, interesting and are a joy to take down. You also get 2 proper endings this time round, a hidden zone to find, and the soundtrack to the whole game is just as gorgeous, if not gorgeouser, if that is a word, than the first game. I really like the first Sonic game, and honestly I have a ton of love for it, but I just feel that this one is a much more balanced and rewarding 8-bit adventure. I do agree to some extent that Sonic 2 does throw you what seems like impossible challenges, but they can honestly be overcome, and once you play through the game enough times it really starts to open up and you will start to appreciate it and have fun. I really hope that I've convinced you to give this game a go if you're not keen on it. Whilst not perfect, the challenges at first seem insurmountable, but when you eventually break through and win them, there's no greater feeling. I totally agree with you though, that the Scrambled Egg Zone is too unfair. Aspects should never have made it this difficult, as it's not always clear what you must do. And I can see why players hate this zone. However, with the respawning rings and lives reappearing again, each time Sonic loses a life, you can at least try again. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the Sega Master System is a well-crafted 8-bit sequel that took what was great about the first game and expanded and improved on it greatly. It's easy to overlook because in many ways it feels so different from the first game, and most critics might say that some of the gimmicks are unnecessary. This game is not perfect. As I said, the Scrambled Egg Zone should have never been as difficult as it is, and I also really feel that you should have been able to play as Tails after rescuing him. Even if you had to type in a code, then he could go and rescue Sonic. That's kind of what I would have done if I was making this game. Finally, again, I wasn't a fan of the Underground Zone, and I felt that the game would have benefited without it. Apart from that, this is a fantastic underrated game that is fun, addictive, challenging and rewarding. So with that, I give Sonic the Hedgehog 2 a Hedgehog-tastic 4.8 out of 5. Again, I actively encourage gamers who fell out of favour with this title to give it another try, as I do feel it's an undisputed classic. It just requires a lengthy playthrough to really appreciate all the things that you may not have seen first time round. Okay, so thank you very much. This has been Lucas Mackintosh, and thank you for watching another one of my retro video game reviews. If you enjoyed my content, then why not hit that subscribe button, because what it means for you lovely people is you'll be instantly subscribed to my channel and notified every time I upload a new video, and I've got new content coming each and every single week. You can check me out on Twitter at DodgeThisGame, I'm on Tumblr at DodgeThisGame, and I'm also on Facebook as well, and you can find the link in my channel banner or in this video description. Take care, and I'll see you next time for another retro video game review.